You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
So welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank. I'm here with a special guest. Her name is Danae Watkins.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Danae.
Oh, gosh, where should I start? I've got a Bachelor of Science in Health Promotion, so public health. So I've got a really strong part of my soul that's very much connected to health education and passionate about working in that area. So I've always really, I suppose even going back to my childhood, I've always been fascinated with teaching people and loved health. So I try and do that through my podcast, but yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I live in Perth. I live in the most isolated city in the world, which is Perth, West Australia, which is a big state in Australia.
So first of all, is this what you do professionally? You're a health consultant?
So I have done health consulting. I'm doing now health account management for a company because I did do a little bit of health consulting, but consulting works very, some months or some weeks you're really busy and other weeks you're not so busy. And I just found with having a mortgage that was a little bit financially unreliable. So I've gone back into doing some full-time work, doing account management, and then I also have my own podcast like you. So I find I get pretty busy trying to balance both working and then my passion for podcasting. So, yeah.
So what types of do you focus on mental health? Do you focus on physical health? What do you find the most inspiring?
Oh, listen, mental health, I suppose in my life I've got family members who suffer from mental health. So I'm really passionate about advocating for mental health and educating people about mental health. But I cover a broad range of chronic health issues. And nothing's off limits with me. I mean, I'd love to cover more mental health because I just think the more we talk about it and get more educated, the more we can empathise with people.
Do you think people don't empathize enough?
Oh, it's a hard one, empathy, because I think having a family member that suffers mental health, I've grown up being really empathic myself, but I don't think sometimes if you haven't had exposure to how debilitating a mental health condition can be to a human being's life, it's probably really challenging to understand it. So I think through education, it can help.
The problem
Create
is
more.
we're not aware of these problems that are going on around us. Like I went to school, I got my associate's degree, but I found really fascination in psychology on the concept
Yes.
of there's so many things that can go and play a part into your life that turns you into the person you are today, such as your environmental, such as your genetics, such as just your overall, like, I guess, imprinting through life. You start off from when you're a child. I found my fascination lying with psychoanalysis and trying to, interpret things from artwork. I had a good idea for that because if you look at like a painting, we're all technically just a piece of art. We're all something that's getting crafted. And through years and years and years of life, it takes a toll on you. And it's crazy to hear now that the statistics for kids that are developing severe depression and anxiety are getting at much younger ages. Addiction happening at younger ages, like in my area, kids at 15, 16, 14 are getting either pregnant and then getting opioid addiction. So they're addicted to heroin. And it's like, it seems like where that might happen later in their years, maybe the average age 30, where someone would start diving into some dangerous drugs. It's happening younger now because kids feel like they don't matter. Kids feel the weight of the world on their shoulders and they feel like they don't have a voice. So it's difficult for a person of maybe who's 45, 50 years old to hear a kid go, I have severe depression, I take medication for it, that they immediately go, Yeah, you don't know what depression is. I'm like, no, they really do. They're growing up in an
Mm.
age now where you didn't grow up and have a cell phone that, your immediate source for information was the first thing bad that pops up on your phone. It's not checking the time anymore. It's an Amber Alert. It's all these other things that pop up.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it's frightening to hear young children committing suicide. I mean, in Australia, it's an epidemic. I mean, we've just had a very famous footballer in Australia. Well, he went off the side of a road which was straight, and a lot of people thought, yeah, there's no way that would have happened incidentally. I think what's really tragic about suicide and mental health is that it's not discriminatory. It's affecting young children, at primary school, and it's affecting 70-year-olds. I think that's what's so devastating about mental health and suicide is that it's affecting so many people at so many different ages. And yeah, you're right. I think we underestimate the stress that young children are being born into now. Like I got my first mobile phone when I was 17. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be pressured by social media. I'm in my mid 40s, and only 2 years ago I went on Instagram, and even was it last year I was looking at some pictures and I thought, oh, she's so skinny. And I didn't actually, I was lucky having some self-awareness, but I noticed myself feeling a bit down, and I thought, God, get a grip. Stop. And I actually had to disconnect from those images because I really realized it was bringing up feelings in myself of insecurities that I hadn't felt, since I was a teenager. So I think I can't imagine what it would be like to be a young person being so evolved around their mobile phone and social media, and how it affects your mental perception of the world and yourself.
I
Uh,
think there's
it-
so many examples that can come into what we can blame for what technology has done, whether it's just giving us an open source platform for people to give, their opinion, to crap on somebody else's
mm,
day, or just to complain and bring a lot more stress. But what I see is that, it's not the fault of, let's say, my parents. It's not the fault of kids that are parents that have kids that have these social media or these types of mental problems. It's the fact
mm,
that before, it was really, really, really easy for a parent to shield your kid from
yes.
something of the dangers and the weird outcomes of the world, such as you're watching news downstairs and little Bobby comes down to get some breakfast. You're able
Mm,
to switch the channel over or get his mind to not pay attention to the news. It's very hard nowadays for a parent, especially in the economy we have, working two jobs and still shield them from the dangers of the world. Because now you're seeing parents start investing themselves into their children. They start going, I want to make sure you go to school. I want to make sure this happens so you can have this, because you don't want to struggle like me. You don't want to do this. You want to, like, that was always there throughout all of history. Kids have seen parents struggle, but parents have had a lot more of a capability of hiding it, even though it was still
mm,
noticeable to the kid. The kid going, yeah, I know, I see you struggle, I see how tired you are, I see that, like, I see it, how hard
mm,
you work. And it's hard to do it after a while, but nowadays they don't, they can't, they just physically can't try and hide that from their kid anymore. And that plays an emotional toll on the kid. So imagine, before you went to school, let's say in middle school, what was that, like 13, 12 years old? And you're like, okay, well, I'm going into school now. Oh, why don't I turn on the news instead of watching cartoons? Next thing you know, you're on your way to school and you're like, wow, there was like 4 murders. There was like all
yeah.
this. And next thing your whole day is crap. That kid does that on a daily basis. Next thing you know, he's got a mental health problem. Now,
Mm,
before, instead of watching your good cartoons in the morning, nowadays it's come to the fact, like, as soon as you wake up in the morning and check your phone, hit Safari, hit anything, you have millions of news articles telling you there was this shooting, there was this happening, there was
mm,
this happening, and the kids going with that in their head. I mean, like, I remember my parents used to get into arguments before I would go to school, and it would mess me up all day. It wasn't their
yeah.
fault, but it was the fact, like, it's a harmful, bad influence right in the morning that can affect anybody. It doesn't matter what your age is. You start off the day like crap, it basically rolls like crap through the rest of the day.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I mean, as you're talking, I was thinking of what it would be like to go to school in America, because in Australia we have actually very restricted gun laws, but I can't imagine what American children must feel like when they see a gun shooting happening at school and they think, you know, they have to worry about, you know, being in danger when they go to school. I mean, and I mean that they've got a whole nother level of stress that we don't actually have in Australia, thank goodness. But I can't, that must be traumatic for children to have to actually find time to focus as well as worry about their own personal safety when they're at school. I mean, that's terrible.
Well, it's really strange now. When we used to have fire drills, earthquake drills, and then maybe once every like year or so, we would have a strangers in the building drill
What?
where a stranger in the building drill is like, hey, the teacher's going to shut off the lights, they're going to cover up the window, we're going to lock the door, and we're going to get into the corner.
What?
That actually isn't that uncommon. It's mostly like if there's ever, and this was like once every couple of years, like this drill rarely happened. And I mean, I think I've only experienced it twice in my basically 15 years of education. So
Mm,
it was like, it was a way of warning, like if there's something that happened, there are crazy people out there. If someone did come into the
yeah.
school, how could we manage to make sure everybody was okay? And
Mm.
now, like once a month, these kids are having a thing called shooter drills. I'm like, what?
What?
Like,
That's insane.
what is a shooter drill? And my little cousin's like, basically, it's like what you did before, but we all get into a corner and we hope
Mm.
that a stranger doesn't come into the school and shoot everybody. I'm like, the idea of shoving all
Mm.
of the kids in a corner where they're out of the view of the doorway in case a guy looks in. It's
Mm.
just like you wanted to be the kid on the inside because then everybody else would be taking the bullets first. And that's like a weird way to think of it, but
Yeah.
it's all about this protective instinct for yourself. Like
To survive.
nobody ever questions, why don't we someone like the teacher stand behind the door in case someone does
Mm.
come in, and then we have a chance to maybe, because if a guy walks in, he's not just going to see a bunch of kids in a corner and then just not shoot. He's going to light them up. They're all easy targets, sad to say. And when my
Mm.
cousin told me, like, we now have this shooter drill, I'm like, a shooter drill? Like, that's the weirdest thing ever. And he goes, yeah, it's just happening so much now. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
we've become null to the fact, like now when you see a shooter
Mm.
drill, it doesn't hit anybody anymore. They're like, oh, it's just another shooting. And then they walk off with their day. I'm like, that's not supposed to be like that.
Damn, I agree with you. That's life shouldn't be like that. I can't even imagine the stress that a child, if that's certainly also happening to a vulnerable child and a very sensitive child. God, that's got to be affecting them mentally. You know what I mean?
Well, see,
During the day.
the problem is when you're a kid, you don't have any really problems when it comes to the world. Your most like inherent problem or something that's right in front of your face would be like, I didn't have my bagel with butter on it this morning, so my day's a little bit off. I didn't have my Fresh Prince of Bel Air to watch in the morning. That's the problems. But nowadays kids are like, there's this post about me going around on the internet and now
Mm.
it's talking trash on me and it's getting so many likes and now everyone's sharing it. There's a song getting written about me. There's all these things going on. It's like, whoa. It's like, technology, you little bastard. You did something. You went the wrong way. And that's not really the fault of technology. It's also the fault of us, on the concept of we want to compare 24/7. We want to judge by others' looks, by others'
Mm.
what they have, such as like they have a fancy car. I mean,
Mm.
there used to be this one YouTube advertisement that used to piss me off because it would open up. It was a guy in a Lamborghini, and he goes, "Yeah, I just sit in front of my Lamborghini with all these books on my wall. I'm in my $4 million house." He's just labeling all the things he has and basically making you feel like trash. And I'm like,
Mm.
I mean, I get it. You're trying to sell something like this is a lifestyle you could be living, but at the same time, it's like maybe that's not fit for everybody. Do you think someone wants to wake
Mm.
up and see something like that right in the morning? It's going to make them feel like crap, like they're not doing anything.
I agree with you. I think we put so much expectation on ourselves, as you say, comparing to, what everyone else has all the time instead of unfortunately, sometimes it takes a crisis in your life to realize what you have is enough, and being grateful for what you have is sometimes enough and all you need. I had a family member that was unwell at the end of last year, and I took time off. I actually left my job to take care of him, and so I was on a pretty tight budget for a number of months, and it made me realise that I was, spending money on things I didn't need, and it does make you realise that you're buying a lot of stuff just because, I don't know, trying to sometimes fill emotional voids in your life, but yeah, it shouldn't have to take a crisis or something for you to sort of realise what's important, and that all the material stuff is not stuff you really need. You know what I mean?
I think it was not my senior summer, but my year after that, where I was like, I'm not going to go to school. I'm just going to get 2 jobs and work and just because I wasn't fit for school. So I did that. And then I was out of a job for like a couple months out of winter. And I went down to having literally where you're just scraping change out of anywhere you can find it just to buy like a dollar drink or something.
Or a coffee, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I would gather up all the change, go to Coinstar. It would be like $4. I'm like, okay, so I got these drinks that are going to last me, and then it wasn't fun. It was not, but it humbled me in a way, because now I have a pretty good amount in my bank account. Every paycheck I get, I put right in the bank. And I'm like, I have family members that go, dude, you have so much. Why don't you just go buy something for yourself? Why don't you treat yourself? I'm like, because I don't need to, because there's going to be one day I might not have a job. There's going to be one day where I'm always looking ahead, having that plan B. And you know what happened to me? I ran over a nail with my left tire, and it got a flat immediately.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, damn. And I had to get a tow, and it ended up costing me $300 something. I got it all fixed, got it all done. I was like, all right, well, thank God I got that fixed. I had the money for it. And you know what happened 3 days later? I ran over another nail in my other tire. I lost $1,000 in a week. At that point, you don't want to go anywhere. You just want to stay home. You don't want to ever touch your car again. But I realized, imagine if I didn't have that money in my bank account. Imagine if I spent that $100 or that $80 for a T-shirt or a pair of pants that had just a specific brand name for it.
Yeah. I think if you're blessed and you have a massive amount of abundance, someone like Oprah or something, even those very affluent people say that you get to a point where you've got so much money that I suppose you realise you only need what you need. Do you know what I mean? So I just think we have become a bit obsessed about overconsumption. I think I wrote somewhere on my Instagram, I wish we would sort of think more humanism instead of consumerism. You know what I mean? I think
that's
we've
beautiful, because honestly, we live in a world that's all about consumption. Whether, I tell everybody everything is fine in excess, okay? But you drink too much water, some bad things are going to happen. You drink too much alcohol, you get addicted, things happen. Everything is fine in moderation. Your body, okay, from not even from the mental standpoint, but the physical standpoint, your body shuts down if you have too much alcohol. Your brain goes, I'm turning off the fucking lights. I'm sorry, you too much.
Time out.
Yeah, it's your body has a natural reset. Okay, if you start doing something that gets it into a critical level, like, have you ever had a near-death experience?
I haven't, but I'm hearing what you're saying in terms of, I suppose it goes back to basic biology, isn't it? Your cells and your human body physiologically is made for homeostasis. So if you sort of to either side of your homeostasis, that balance, it's just not going to be good. It's not good for society. It's not good for your human body, is it? Do you know what I mean?
It's crazy because, you can relate it to a little bit of a fight in a way. If you've ever been in a physical fight or just a confrontation with someone, immediately if you get hit or if you've experienced some type of physical damage, your body starts sending this adrenaline to your just muscles, everything, and next thing you know, you're like, whoa, I'm on a major alert right now. I remember I got hit by a jet ski, and
I heard about that on your podcast. I listened to that episode,
and it was one of those moments where I flipped, and when I went into the water, before I even knew I was hurt, my brain knew that my back was messed up. So what it did was just not even thinking about it. Like it just happened. Next thing I knew, I'm staring with I have my stomach on my jet ski seat. I'm looking down at the water and I'm like, what just happened? Like trying to kind of recount it all. And if someone gets into a car accident, they're like, did that just happen? And I was like, my brain just ripped, it just had my body on autopilot, just ripped me out of the water. I don't remember doing any of it. And then laid myself down on my jet ski because it knew my back was hurt before I even knew it. I ended up standing up after I floated for 30 minutes. I floated to this little island and I was waiting for the natural resources police to come by and check me out, make sure everything was okay. And I got up and started walking. And as I stepped, I felt my whole entire weight was on just my spine. So I literally just bent to my knees and fell down. And I was sitting there maybe I just have I just got to walk it off. I just got to walk it off. And every step I took, it felt like every pressure wasn't on my legs anymore. It was right on my back. My brain knew that before I even knew it. Before I was even recognizable to that pain being there, my brain was like, yeah, you messed up your back. And I already had the planned out strategy of how it was going to try and make sure that I didn't do any more damage to it. And it was fascinating because I was like, we have these mental stimulants, we have these things in our everyday life that cause toll on this thing. But your body has a natural reaction to try and survive.
Yeah.
And sadly, nowadays, when it comes to survival, it's all about getting what you want, getting what you need, getting what you have, not about caring or helping out anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. I think and what's the saddest in society is that the people, our caregivers of the world, whether that be our nurses, our enrolled nurses, our teachers of the world, they're often so underpaid, and that's really sad. I mean, at the end of the day, children's brains develop, all the research is there, between the age of 0 and 7. And so if you can give a child a fantastic early childhood education that nurtures all their physical, emotional, and their well-being, it really sets them up for the rest of their life. And yet, what we pay an early childhood teacher is, I don't know about it in the US, but in Australia, it's a very underpaid job, and yet they're doing one of the most. Same with nursing people, nurse people that nurse people in nursing homes, aged care facilities. I just think the people that often work with our most vulnerable and care for the most vulnerable, it's the toughest work out there, are often very undervalued and underpaid. And so
I agree with you because
sad.
For me, I hate the education system. I honestly, it gave up on me from the very start because I had ADHD. So it was like, you have ADHD, you're mentally not sound. You're not fit for a classroom. We need to put you in a separate environment. So from first to third grade, I had millions or at least a couple teachers that were just like, we're just going to send you out. We can't deal with your millions of problems. We can't do it. And I'm like, you're not giving me the chance. You're not giving me, you're not it's hard for me. It's going to be more difficult than just the average student. So they would send me out of this class. And eventually I got my own class. I've talked about it before in the podcast. I brought it up a few times and I've had people go, that's not true. There's no way an education system put you in this closed off room where there was just a window in the door and there was just a desk and a piece of paper in front of you. I was like, that's what happened to me. Then I got into a podcast with one of my buddies that I hadn't seen in a long time. And we started talking and I start telling him this story. And as I'm saying it, he stops me and goes, the walls were white, right? And was there a desk in there? And was it near this area? And he literally said exactly where it was located. And I was like, yeah, dude, how do you know? And he goes, dude, my brother has a major mental disability and he's a year behind us. They put him in that room. That used to be his room. And I'll go,
So
oh my
sad.
God. So it's the truth. Like that, he made that, he literally said it. And that, he finished off what I was saying so people can find that real evidence. That was an actual room. So when I left third grade, because I told my mom, I'm not going to school, she's like, you got to go to school. I'm like, no, it's not happening. I'm not going back there to a place that does not give two shits about me. She goes, I see this as a problem. Maybe we should find another way for you to go. And I went to this other school in the area still, but maybe it was actually closer to our house. And
Oh.
she goes, all right, let's go learn about this. So I'm now this fresh kid that gets put into a whole new environment. I got to relearn, make friends. I got to make a new step. You know, I got to find out if you're going to be the cool kid, you're going to be the skate, whatever, you know, all these like little child problems basically. And I met this woman who was actually on my podcast on New Year's Day. We podcasted because she was one of the very few teachers that ever gave a shit about me. Her name is Miss Chrissy Ulrich. And let me tell
I'll
you,
have to listen to that one.
let me tell you, hearing her talk about, I was just a kid that had something about him that was a little bit different, but that's what made me unique. And her telling me that on the podcast, and literally I had ADHD. So she was like, all right. And she knew I used to drum on the desk or tap my foot or something. She would put eraser caps on my pencils so I could drum on the desk. She would let that creativity flow. She would let me do, like, if I was at recess and I didn't run around, I just sat there the whole time or something and talked to my friends. She would be like, hey, Robbie. And she would kick a ball and go all the way across the field. Can you go get that for me? Or like, can you go pick up some of the stuff around the yard? I'm like, yeah. And I would just run and grab everything and bring it back to her. And she was like, you good? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, you seem like, you got a little bit more energy in you. Do you want to go run one more time? I'm like, I'm good. And I come back in class and I was 100% focused. I was 100%, energy was gone. I was like, I'm ready to learn now. I'm able to soak up all this information. But she does that now. And she, even 30 years into the business now, she's still investing her emotional, her physical time into her students of these young ages that are going through, like, parents going through a divorce, parents are going through something where the kid's being affected. And she goes, takes them out, ice cream, whatever you want, like, get them out of the environment. She invests her time with the parents, says, what is your kid like? I've asked him, I want to know what do you do for them? What is it? Maybe he would like to do this, suggest, like, it's seeing her come around and still do it today. She's has all these students that 30 years later come back to her and still want to talk to her. Like, she's that
I
much
think
of
that's
it.
beautiful.
That's something we need more days now. But sadly, the way we pay teachers, it just gives them the bare minimum for them to barely try, just enough to where they go, oh, well, I have a pension, so I'm set. Like, I don't care if you guys learn or not. I'm like, you're messing it up. Because maybe at the start you had the good intentions, but now it's turning into the point where you're like, you don't care anymore because they're not paying you enough.
I think it's such a complex issue. I mean, in Australia, the universities sort of churn out lots of teachers, and a lot of them can't find work. And then, a lot of the time now they just do their contracts are quite short. So it's really difficult. You just need to be able to, I think, put a little bit of performance. They should be measured on, I suppose, the general well-being and happiness, and really performance appraise people and how they're going with bringing out the best in every individual child. And I know it's difficult when you're in a class and you're trying to manage 30, 40 students. But there are a lot of great teachers out there and a lot of beautiful caregivers out there who do it because they just love children or they love caring for the elderly, or do you know what I mean? But there should be ways that they get acknowledged better, I think, whether that's financial or depends. Some people are not motivated by monies, but being acknowledged as a human being for what they're putting and giving out in the world, I think is really important for a giver.
Yeah, it's crazy to see, like, this education system that I used to not believe in so much and not like at all. What they're doing with younger generations now, where now they're looking at your nutrition instead of medicating you. Like, the first thing for me was put him on medication. Now they're like, wait a minute, he has ADHD. So let's see, maybe if we just changed his diet, instead of giving him the chocolate milk at lunch, maybe we give him like a regular milk, or we give him something that didn't have the extra sugar added to it, not the chips at lunch, not the dessert or the cookie. Let's give them something that labels that down. Like, back when I went to school, we had this basically natural energy drink they would feed to the kids. It was called Switch. It was supposed to be like vitamin C. You get your vitamins in it, but it was like basically like a pumped up, like, carbonated energy drink. I'm like, this is like giving a soda to a kid. This is giving a coffee to a kid, and you wonder why we can't sit straight in class. Like, there are kids that needed it, that didn't sleep too well, and then there was people like me that would drink like 3 of them, and next thing you know, I'm like bouncing off the walls in class. Like, Robbie, can you sit down? I'm like, I'm going to sharpen my pencil 10 more times. And they're like, you don't have any. Like, it was so crazy to hear. Now they're focusing on nutrition, where before, when I was in school, now they were like, oh, he needs to be medicated. He needs to be medicated. I'm like, no. I have not been medicated for ADHD. I know what it would do to me. I know it would probably make me, more calm and focused and have more time with my thoughts, but that would lose me. That would lose my tangents. That would lose my, like, as we're talking.
Your creativity, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, and that's what happens. Like, you see, like, artists or somebody that's really into painting or creating something, maybe even if it's dark poetry or something, they lose their creativity when they get medicated for depression, when they get something about them that gets takes away that creativity. Sometimes that pain is the link to their creativity. They just need to find a better way to release that stress, to find a way to totally forget about those things.
I agree with you. I think I watched a really powerful documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, called The Magic Pill. Have you seen it? It's on Netflix.
I have seen it.
Oh, that was seriously. Oh my God. I don't know. What did you think about it? I thought that was probably one of the I've seen 1 or 2 really powerful documentaries this year, but that would be up with being one of the most powerful I've seen, for a long time, looking at, in how in that documentary they had the case study with the autistic child, and that when they interviewed her, she was non-verbal. She had not verbalized anything to her parents. She was about 4 years of age, and she was literally standing on the windowsill. And and then some of the pills that this young girl was taking, even the father said was just so toxic. He had looked up some of the tablets and what was in it, and he couldn't believe some of the toxicity of some of the drugs she was taking at such a young age, and he was quite concerned. And then they changed her diet, and at the end, she started talking to it for the very first time to her parents. I swear, I agree with you. I think it concerns me that we don't take seriously what we're putting in our body as affecting our mental health and well-being and how we interact with the world. Do you know what I mean?
The crazy thing is about the documentary was that the fact that they labeled that a ketogenic diet was the way to solve this problem that someone might have.
Yeah.
That is true on the concept of that might work for some person. It's not going to work for everyone.
I agree with you. I think it's all about balance. For some people, you're right. I think it's the diet for them, but as you say, it's all about balance. I mean, the chef that's in that documentary, what's his name? He's Australian, and over in Australia, everyone sees him as, oh my God, he's Pete Evans is all about keto, and he is a testament to he lives an extremely healthy lifestyle. But I agree with you. I think
Pete Evans.
Is it Pete Evans? Who was in the documentary? I have to look it up now.
Chef Pete Evans.
Yeah. And he advocates for eating paleo, but I don't think it's for everyone. But for the right people, and certainly in this documentary, it was for them. But I think I've interviewed people on my podcast, and when they look at all the research out there about diet and the best diet for chronic health, it always comes back to the Mediterranean diet, which is a balance of everything. Good oils, bit of fruit and veg, just not processed crap. You know what I mean? Like, which is, easier said than done. It's not, I mean, I love a bit of chocolate, but I just don't agree with all this fizzy drink and they think they can give it to young kids. And then they question why they're jumping off the walls. I agree with you.
Well, it's crazy because the one thing that I really dived into was the basis of nutrition because I am a workout fanatic. I like to know what puts in my body. I know that I've eaten fish and chicken for so long now that if I eat red meat, I won't go to the bathroom for 5 or 6 days. Like I think
Is that right?
I had red meat probably a week ago and I still have not gone to the bathroom yet. It's uncomfortable. You don't feel well. You don't feel like you want to go out and explore or do anything because you're
Yeah.
just in overall like bloating pain. And I'm like, it's weird to see that. And I had someone explain that to me who's a bodybuilder, and he's like, you eating red meat that you haven't had in a long time. Yeah, you have that craving for it, but it's like your body's a Corvette, okay? You just threw diesel into your Corvette engine and now your
Mm,
car's not going to run right. I'm like, that
mm,
makes 100% perfect sense because like, like we say, everything's fine in, excess. Like you want to make sure that you're doing it in a right way. You don't want to make sure you have a little bit, not a whole lot. Like
mm.
chocolate, that is an antidepressant. You eat a little bit of dark chocolate, your mood increases. The
Yeah.
problem is people go too far where they invest all their emotional problems into eating. And you see people that binge eat.
Mm,
You see people that,
mm.
just constantly look for the dopamine rush they get from, you know,
Food.
yeah. And it's like, I tell people, you get that from anything. When I get done working out, my cortisol levels, my little like
Mm,
my stress relieving things, the way like that's how I take out my stress is with the
yeah.
gym. And we get cortisol levels just from connecting with people. We
Mm,
get that rush in the back of our head that we need. And now people aren't experiencing the right amount of cortisol. We're experiencing um, I guess false cortisol, I would call it. Like when it comes to just the acceptance we get from an Instagram post or a like,
yeah.
it's not
I
real
agree with you.
connectivity.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you know there's this a study that's happening in the state that I live in Perth, and they have assessed that children, little babies, when they're babies, when our brains are growing, their neurons start connecting through watching their parents' face, looking at the little facial expressions, and they get to start reading emotion and perceiving emotion by looking at faces. But what's happening now and what they're finding is that little babies' brains aren't developing and neurons aren't connecting the way they should be because they're noticing that lots of parents now are spending more time. Say, if you notice, and I've started now looking at a parent when they're pushing a pram, quite often now, instead of years ago, they would really be focused on the baby and looking at the baby and speaking to the baby and smiling at the baby and expressing to the baby their emotions. But quite often now you'll see parents looking at their mobile phone. And what they've found is parents are no longer spending as much time as they used to, really focused on the baby parent connection, looking at their face and spending that time interacting. And the less interaction is leading to neurons not developing and connecting at the pace that they used to. And that's going to be a big issue.
I've actually seen this kind of happen firsthand with my little nephew. He's about the age of 2. He's his mom is a school teacher, for younger kids, kindergarten and these types of things. And the things she does with him are way at a intellectual level that I never even would have fathomed at that age. Like she has different sandboxes set up, one bucket
Mm,
filled with water, one bucket
yeah.
filled with mud, one bucket filled with sand. She has toys
Mm,
lined up and she built this for him. She's like, it's supposed to teach him about cleaning up after himself and also what the types of dirt are. So she's giving
that's
him like
right.
this science thing. So he takes
Yeah.
a toy, playing with it in the sand, and dips it in the water. After a while,
Yes.
that water starts turning a different color and starts to look
Mm,
different. And he looks at it and questions it. So now
yeah.
he's been used to it for probably a couple months now. I see how it changed him in that short amount of time to the point where now he knows if he sticks his dinosaur toy in the mud, he can use the
Mm,
water to clean it off. He can use it
yes.
to do these types of things. I'm like, he's doing shit at the age of 2, or I'm like, this kid's going to be the next Albert Einstein. But she takes him outside, walks with him, shows him nature,
Yeah.
shows him these things, always goes down into the detail of it. Like, you see this plant? This is something, I don't want you to find this out on your own. This is something like you feel this plant. This is nature. This is something that's out here. This is something we're out of tune with. And I've seen how it's developed him and that connection he has with her and with his dad too. And it's seeing something grow and the invest of time and seeing someone that actually has hopes for becoming a well-rounded person when they grow up instead of just being reliant on social media. Like he's at the age of social media where it just keeps getting more and more like just new
intense.
Yeah, more stuff keeps coming out. And seeing that happen, I'm like, this kid's not going to care too much about his cell phone. He's going to care about the outside. And it's crazy to watch that.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think nature play is really big in Australia because all the studies have shown that in early childhood, children, it really helps with their creativity and their innovation. So if you want children to be more creative, more innovative, they are sort of creating these nature play environments now in schools in early childhood, so it really helps to bring out their creativity versus giving them iPads. I think finally they've started to realise that giving a 4-year-old an iPad in a kindergarten is a bit ridiculous, and that really what they need to do is get them back in the garden and realise that nature is just full of life lessons and full of so much beauty, and allow their creativity to understand. And that's where they should be teaching science. And she sounds like an amazing teacher. What a wonderful parent.
Well, it's crazy to hear that like nowadays kids are not going to know the struggle of what it was like to have 6 textbooks in your backpack and feel that weight on your shoulders. Like you're like, oh my God, like, like
I remember those days too.
it's now like the kids now have an assigned tablet. And it's like, whoa,
Oh,
you
isn't that
have that
insane?
screen 24/7. Like you just need
Ugh,
to take that home too. And it's like you're gonna miss the days where they're used. I like holding a nice piece of paper in my hand. I like
me
reading
too.
books, but I didn't discover reading books until I became older. Now I'm making up for lost time. I go to thrift stores, I go to like other places like the library, and I pick up a nice book by Shakespeare. Actually, a little bit of background information. I used to do these in person with a little Zoom recorder, and my buddy's coming over later today. He does a motivation podcast. I got him started into doing that because he was like, wow, he's like talking to someone and getting that motivation out there really like lets my day go full ahead of me. I work 2 jobs. I have 1 day off a week. And he's like, I literally only sleep 4 hours a day. And this has been the best podcasting I don't even know what it is. I'm like, dude, it's just conversation. And when I had this mobile recorder, the beginning, my first 50 episodes, it was sitting on top of a William Shakespeare book. Like I had so many people that would question me like, you have a William Shakespeare book? Do you actually read that? I'm like, dude, I read so much stuff now where before I was like reading a book was the hardest thing for me to do. But I started reading it. I'm like, it's really fascinating the way that it can create a movie into your head. And it can create this type of rush, like drinking a nice coffee, let's say, right on your porch, like 5 o'clock in the morning, the sun's just coming up and you have a nice book in front of you. I get it.
I agree with you. I think that just I don't know, the older I'm getting, the more I realise just the simple things, a really beautiful sunrise, or just last night actually there was this full moon and it was just absolutely exquisite, and I just actually pulled the car over and had a look at it, and I just thought, you do have to just take time in your day where you just realise there's beauty all around us, but we just get so consumed in shit really
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
we just we get bogged down in stuff. It's
My
just stuff.
my grandfather laughs at me. He's like, it's 10 o'clock. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're going to bed? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're an old man. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I like to get up really early in the morning and have my whole day planned ahead of me. I like to go grocery
Yeah.
shopping at 5 o'clock in the morning. I like not, and it's not saying I don't like people, but I don't like being around these images and these fake personas we all show. Like so many times nowadays, some dude comes up to you, yeah, I got this, got that, got this. I'm like, you're just listening to him. You're like, you don't have any of that, dude. You're just lying to me right to my face. And you're totally glossing over the fact that you're doing it because you've done it so much now. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard
So true.
because we feel like we're constantly have to show how much we got to make a little bit of just, I guess, respect out of somebody. I'm like, no, hold the door open. That's the best
Mm,
thing you can do. That'll show the most humblingest factor about somebody.
mm. Well, did you watch the you probably don't. I really love the TV series Big Little Lies, and I'm up to the third series now, whatever. And just what it shows is just everyone, all these women, all these people trying to people please and show how good each other is, and that eventually there's so much delusion and so much lies going on in each other's lives that it just starts unraveling, you know. And I just think, yeah, this you just got to start getting real. I think stop trying to be someone you're not, or stop. You know, you are where you are, and just accept it and appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just
accept your flaws as a unique thing about yourself rather than look at them as something that's going to hold you back.
yeah. And I think the sooner you just accept and be grateful for where you're at, you know, there's always someone sadly much worse off. You know, I often, for about 12 years, I used to be a volunteer on Soup Patrol, where you go and feed the homeless, and when you get to meet and speak with people who are homeless and living that life, you realise how vulnerable we all are. That one minute, you know, I mean, you meet people who sadly might get cancer, and you know they lose their job and they don't have family, and one minute they had a house and they had a car and all these material things that we would, you know, symbolize someone that's sort of made it, or but how quickly those things can be taken away and happen to any of us. You know, if you get sick and you don't have family and you're sort of vulnerable, you know, you can find yourself in a situation you would never have thought yourself to have been. You know what I mean?
every
And
every day
yeah,
is a journey. Like, every day is like a gift, kind of, because you don't know when your time's going to be up. It could be now, it could be something that happens
absolutely.
later down the road. So I tell
Yeah.
people, do you want all your time just to be comfortable sitting and watching Netflix? Do you want your years to be spent that way? They're like, well, it's much safer inside the home. No, your home could collapse on you. Your home could do all these
Mm,
things. There's so many of these factors you're totally glossing over. So why don't you go experience your life? Why don't you live one? I don't want to be 90 years old. Somebody rolls me up to a window and asks you, how was
mm,
your life? And I said, I made it through. I want to say I lived
yeah.
a life. I had a journey. I got to go, you know, to China and hang out with the monks. Like, I want those types of stories, man, because those are the ones you're going to remember. Those are the ones that you're going to feel like they really impacted you towards the end of your days. Like, I just don't want my whole nostalgia to be off a phone screen.
Oh, I agree with you. I think life's about living and experiencing, connecting with human beings. It's certainly not about. I mean, I think technology is amazing. I mean, being able to even, you know, meet you, Robbie, and have a chat to someone who lives on the other side of the world, I think that's incredible. And I think that's technology being used to connect with another human being and share thoughts. And, you know, that's wonderful. But I think to live your life um, through thinking that, you know, having a like, as you said, we're more than an icon on a screen. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, you know, I would hope that you see yourself as more valuable than just someone liking an Instagram post, you know?
Sometimes playing it safe isn't the safest option.
Yeah. Oh, listen, and I think sometimes, I mean, doing a podcast I found was really putting myself out there. I'm a person that's a pretty private person, um, but it's really got me out of my shell, and it's been really liberating to be able to speak and learn from other people and connect with people and share those thoughts. Um, and just to know sometimes when you look at your podcast stats and you think, oh my gosh, someone from Saudi Arabia listened to my voice today or something, you know, or someone from Japan, or I think that's amazing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the weird part is most of my audience comes from like England or comes from Australia. I'm like, that's crazy, because like
That's crazy.
these are people I don't know about, but I'm like, I really just want to. I wish I had their like who they were, so I could send them a message. You want to get on the podcast? Like, let's talk.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think what you're doing is great. I think the more we can use technology to connect human beings and share each other's stories, and because everyone has something to offer to the world, you know what I mean?
But nobody feels unique. And let me tell you, I know you had so much going on. You had flights, you had all these things. And I was so happy that we had at least a chance to talk. And I know you're from a different time zone, so trying to coordinate that was
Yes.
even harder. But let me tell you, it was amazing talking to you. You're, I mean, an amazing person. I really want to give you here a minute at the end to kind of promote your podcast where people can find your awesome medical podcast, because it is something like, honestly, it's real
It
stuff.
was beautiful to connect with you.
It's something that people really need to look at, because you have some great content on your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. That means the world to me. Yeah, I'm like you, just trying to actually give back and connect with other people, you know. So I started my podcast because my brother is autistic and he has a lot of mental health issues, and having to navigate the health system can be really, you just feel so vulnerable at times, and you just crave information. And I just sometimes feel some of the information that's out there is not by people that are really qualified to give information. And I was lucky because I've met some beautiful specialists and doctors over the years, and a lot of them want to give information, but they don't often have sometimes mediums to do that. And so I wanted to create a podcast where I go and interview medical doctors about medical health issues, and also I go and speak with patients and get them to share their journey and their health journeys. So because I think we all can learn off each other, and I ask questions that I know sometimes we often feel embarrassed to maybe ask a health professional or medical doctor, because I think there's no silly questions, and sometimes the question you ask might actually help another person. So my medical podcast is just about patients and doctors sharing their stories about health conditions that hopefully might help someone else out there that's suffering, you know?
It's
So yeah.
definitely, it's nice to have a voice that either if someone chooses to listen to it or someone doesn't, it's still out
Yeah.
there and it can still benefit one person out there, and that's enough.
Do you know what? That is so true. When you put yourself out there on a podcast, and, I really admire you too, because I know what it's, you put yourself out there, and sometimes you think, oh God, is anyone going to even listen to this? um, and then you do have to get to a point where I, just like you, I think if this helps one person feel less alone, or they take a little bit of information away from this episode that makes them feel better about themselves, their situation, or helps empower them with knowledge that they didn't have prior, then I feel like I've done something good. So, it's awesome if you hear from someone. Every now and again, I hear from people and they say, oh, that really was helpful. My mum was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and knowing that information has really helped me better understand it, or something. And that means the world to me. I had someone recently I met that listened to a podcast who had a heart condition, and they listened to one of my podcasts and they said it was really helpful to them. So, yeah, I think we all just have to keep putting positive energy out there in a way that we feel we can. Do you know what I mean? And everyone's different how they do it. If it could be in a blog, it could be in what they do, it could be, you know what I mean? We all have
I
something
agree
to
with
give.
you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the fact is that, we don't take the time to learn anymore about each other. And when we do that, we make the biggest mistake of being disconnected from one another, because we all live here together. We might as well take at least an hour just to understand each other.
I agree with you, and care for each other. Now that I've connected with you, Robbie, you're going to be getting I'll be listening. I'm listening to your podcast. I'll be sending you texts. How you going? What's happening? Because I think,
You're gonna be
yeah, it's
sending
all
me.
about.
You're gonna be sending me information like this is something you can do that can help you go to the bathroom when you eat red meat. I'm like, oh my god, like Right.
Oh, you'll have to give me exercise tips. I need to get more motivated. I do exercise, but I don't. How long do you spend at the gym? 2 hours.
Okay, so I go to the gym 2 hours every single day, and I've done it every single day for 7 years. So
Wow.
I
Do you
have a
do weights or what do
yeah,
you
I
do?
do weights. Like since I haven't been going to the bathroom, I've been doing nothing but strictly cardio, and it's
Yeah.
still not nothing's happening. So I'm like, there's gonna be a day that's gonna hit me like a train with no brakes, basically. But it's I tell people like I pulled that out of mental health issues, being
Yeah.
bullied in school. So I kind of took it in the bad way with it. I became addicted to it, and now it's like I don't ever have a day I don't go. But I tell people
Really?
like overworking out, not having a rest day. It's everything's fine in moderation. Don't over exceed it because you will truly
Mm.
ruin it. And now it becomes like a job to work out. It's not really fun anymore.
So what do you do to unwind? Do you relax? What do you have something that you do that helps you relax, or it is the gym?
It's the gym and doing what I'm doing right now, talking to you.
Yeah, relaxing. It is nice, isn't it? I think it's good for our emotional self,
It's
you
it's
know?
some it's something we need. I feel like in a world where people are just like going to gloss over each other, it's just so much easier just to strike up a conversation and find out something interesting or something you didn't know about. I mean, people want to look at stuff and try and get into arguments. I'm like, you can get that same rush you get from seeing an argument if you just decided to listen and understand somebody and raise questions rather
Mm.
than concerns.
I just don't think we listen very much anymore.
You
Do you know
don't
what I mean?
think? That's a fact. I think we're like, oh, we don't want to hear it. We just want to give out our problems. The funny thing is like I've had people try and spark up arguments with me, and I always just sit there and like, okay, well, I understand what you're saying. I really do, and I'm trying to see it from your perspective, and I tell
Mm.
people like, if you're trying to get into an argument with me, it really never works because I'm so open minded, and I try and see it from your side of the view, and I also see it from the other side as well. Because when you
Mm.
get a one sided view of things, you're getting a completely bad source of information. You're just going to never let anything change. You're going to think this is how it is and this is what's always been. But throughout history, things that have been proven true, fact, all this stuff, 10 years later get proven wrong and it's the complete opposite, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to like nutrition and stuff.
Oh, I hear. I just think that yeah, you're right. I think that it's we I mean, don't you think it's insane that we even go to courses now to listen, active listening, to learn active listening? I think
And
that's
you
insane.
do it at your older age too. Like you feel like I need to learn how to be more open. I'm like, no, you don't need to learn how to be more open. You need to find a way to kind of understand that we're in a technology age and this connection that we have,
Mm,
people are just so wrapped up in. It's hard for people of older ages to understand that, especially when they grew up in a world without it.
but it's addictive though. I mean, like I must admit, I have to really force myself, like, I think, enough, Danae, you don't need to look at Instagram again. So I have to, it takes a lot of discipline to disconnect. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think that
just do what I do. Start off by when you go to the grocery store, just leave your phone in your car. I
yes.
do that, and it's a 20-minute trip, and I'm back on it if I wanna be. But, like, people turn that 20-minute trip into 2 hours when they bring that little phone in there.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that you have to learn or set your own boundaries. I think you have to be strong enough to say, you know what, I don't need it. You know what I mean? I went on holidays, was it 2 years ago, and we went to this like chalet out in the like in a farm stay. And my phone, I realized my phone didn't have any reception out at this farm. And I ended up, I thought I was having an anxiety attack. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I really had to pull it together. I was like, this is actually good for you. You don't need your phone. You're on holidays. But it took me a while to process that, to actually detox from my phone, not having internet. It was bizarre. And then after a few days of not having it, I was loving it. I was going back to reading and, actually, just enjoying having some mental space. But it's, you don't actually realize how addictive you're getting to the internet and all these other things until you actually have to stop, and it either gets taken away from you or you're out somewhere and someone says, you know get off your phone. You know what I mean?
Time to wake up. You don't need that alarm. You don't need that alarm to hit you in the face in the middle of the day. You need to just wake up.
Wake up, start being conscious. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, thank you so much for Danae for being on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And so it was just such a thoughtful, I'm just so blessed that you reached out to me. Out of all the Australians you could have spoken to, you chose to speak to me. So thank you so much.